Hello, everybody, and welcome back to WatchHaus. It has been a long time since I've been on the show, I know, but I'm so happy to be reunited with Goopy and Thibble. And tonight we have an amazing guest, our Toronto expert, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Doing well, thank you.
Good, yeah.
Well, it's been a crazy few weeks. So, of course, and I'm so excited to say this again, it is time to reset our watches. So, Connor, I'll let you go first. What have you been up to the past few weeks?
Yeah, so the most recently, the past 72 hours, I've just been playing Anthem nonstop and sitting in load screens and doing that. But this isn't a show about Anthem, and you don't want to hear about my load screen rants. So, written piece-wise, I did a piece on the Overwatch League superlatives, just like kind of a funny little quip piece about dishing out some awards to players and teams, like some most likely tos kind of things. And then today, I actually released a discussion piece talking about the power creep happening in Overwatch and the game itself. Not necessarily related to esports or anything, but just the kind of the dangers of Overwatch continuously buffing these DPS characters like McCree, Reaper, and Hanzo, and how, if we get out of GOAT's meta, what would that look like? Is Overwatch leaning a little too much towards its FPS roots? And, just kind of opening up that discussion a little bit. So that's on Reddit if you want to go chat about that. But that's been it for me. Thibble, what have you been up to?
Man, a lot. Like a lot. Triumph recently just made it to Contenders Trials as of yesterday. And I spent all night screaming about that because that was awesome. I do social media for them, and it's been a lot of fun coordinating. And my work has gotten a lot easier because we had like two divergent plans. Like, what do we do if we make it into trials, and what do we do if we don't make it into trials? That one was basically panic, scream a lot, and then the other one was like actually put out good, insightful commentary about being a Contenders Trials team. So I'm much happier that we get to do that. In terms of actual content, I've actually started posting a couple videos that you guys will see here in a couple days. Stuff talking about players who are looking for team that shouldn't be right now. Quick open division recaps, top 5 logo lists, and cool stuff like that. Just trying to generate some hype around the scene because open division is cool and fun and people should watch it. And speaking of, open division grand finals in North America are actually going on soon, right now. We'll give you live updates as we go, but you made the right choice in being here. Let's put it that way.
Oh, man.
And on that lovely note, oh gosh, I've missed you, Thibble. It's been, like 12 hours since I've been on a broadcast with you?
What?
So I will transition over to our lovely guest, Dave. What have you been up to lately?
Trying to get used to the whole writing networking scheme of everything. I started out with the Game Haus October, November-ish, and then recently I had to kind of take a break from everything to make sure that my life on my end was okay and that I can pay for bills. But other than that, recently I've gotten back into all the writing, and I just put out a piece yesterday kind of touching base on the opponents that are going to be going against Toronto in their first stage. Kind of a tough stage. We'll get into that later. But I also was finally able to get okayed an interview with Sideshow coming up within the next week. It's going to be just kind of organizing whenever we can meet to speak, and he's going to touch on his expectations for Toronto and kind of explain in an analyst's perspective of what he expects out of that team and the players. So right now, that's my plan going forward.
Nice.
That'll be exciting to read. It has been a pretty crazy past few months, to be completely honest. As some of our regulars know, I have been quite busy at work, kind of doing the business side of esports. It's been great. It's been busy. I have been on South American Contenders. Thibble and I did open division playoffs together yesterday on the desk. So yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Especially that last game, huh, Katrina? Underwater Squad versus Off the Map. Ooh, what a matchup that was.
That was something.
Was that the 6 DPS game? Is that what I heard? There was a 6 DPS game in Open Division.
You ever see a Torb Doom comp on Hanamura before?
Only on ladder.
Boy, no, not only on ladder.
Not anymore. Yeah, not anymore.
We're not dreams for just a moment, and that moment is far too long. 3 maps was too much.
It was
Katrina
something.
has, flashbacks to.
Sorry, it's sometimes frustrating trying to. Anyways, so there has been so much Overwatch news going on lately, and of course we are in our lead up to the regular season. We do have Dave on here, especially to talk about Toronto, a team that he knows and loves. So I can't wait to hear all of the information that he has to bring to the table. But first, let's catch up a little bit on some news. Goopy, I know you were pretty excited about some of the pictures and videos coming out of Media Day.
Yeah, it looked incredible this year. So it looks like, a lot of the players were tweeting out about like the media day badges they got where the letters are like 3 letters in a row and all that.
A lot of them loved it.
Yeah, a lot of them loved it. A lot of them were like, Flame was making fun of it. There's a lot of really goofy stuff, but a lot of the images and stuff that are coming out look really cool. I know Flower for NYXL, a team we're about to talk about, he has like a picture of him doing like the sick jump pose right now that's circulating on Twitter. And overall, it looks like, and this is something that I think I'm really passionate about, is Overwatch League is making sure they keep a high production value, really good graphics, good. This is when you tune on to watch Overwatch League, you're watching a polished, incredible thing. I think they're going to maintain that in a really strong way this year. So, yeah, I was loving it from what I saw, at least.
And the jerseys. Oh,
yeah,
And
they all look so good.
Which New Jersey is your favorite?
New as
I'm
an
a fan of
expansion
Toronto.
team?
Or just revive. Oh yeah, of course, Toronto.
What groundbreaking.
shocker.
Or revamp. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough today, so I'll be relying on my hydrating Sprite. But no, like LA Valiant got the new olive green color. I really like that.
Nice
Philly's been making a bit of a stir coming up lately.
Yeah.
Just little changes. I think those little tweaks and everything are really good.
San Francisco's the same way, just a little minor change, did a lot. I really like Paris's jerseys. The red, blue, and gold looks so
More
clean.
so than I expected. I think they really have to be on a jersey or on a skin to actually look good.
Yeah.
Because the logo initially did not impress.
Yeah.
But it's funny we talk about that because another team on the list of teams we'll be going over today had that same problem when their logo was first revealed, which is NYXL. I think everyone saw the NYXL logo and was kind of like, what? That looks dumb. But then they actually put it on stuff and it's like, oh, that's
This
neat.
is fresh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Started winning games.
And then they started winning games, and then suddenly
helps to be the
everyone
best.
was pretty cool with it.
it's true.
Speaking of NYXL and the 5 teams we're going to be talking about today, those 5 teams, by the way, just so everyone knows where we'll be going, are New York, Paris, Philly, Toronto, and Washington. And New York is up first. Who's covering that?
That's me.
Tanner, go ahead.
So I'm gonna talk a little bit about New York here. So for those who didn't see season 1, the New York Excelsior, or as the shorthand, because that's kind of a mouthful, is called the NYXL. It's kind of their trademark name. They're a full Korean roster. A lot of these, they're full Korean roster. A lot of them played in Overwatch World Cup 17 as well as 18. And so kind of looking at the roster itself, the first thing about this team that's pretty crazy to start is the 5 DPS players they have. So you have Sabiobi, Pine, and Libero from season 1. Sabiobi is kind of a Tracer main. A lot of that because Tracer was so in the meta last year. Pine is a hit scan, primarily Widowmaker, McCree. Also just has a completely unorthodox style of play, which kind of made him situational in season 1. And then you have Libero, which every team that's going to be good needs a Libero. He's a DPS player that can essentially play anything and does it really well. He's kind of like a Tavik, only actually wins games. Yeah. But 2 really notable pickups for the NYXL in the offseason were Flower, formerly Nano Hana from XL2 Academy, and Nene. Both of these are massive pickups, but they do raise a lot of eyebrows for what this team is going to do next season. I think all the Pine fans should be a little worried. I mean, he was situational in season 1, and then you bring on 2 incredible DPS players as well. I wonder how much of him we're going to see. I wonder how much of Flower and Nene we're going to see. There's been a lot of talk about how versatile Flower is and how he's kind of like a Libero style player. But again, we'll have to see. Stacked DPS overall, though. Moving to tanks, we have a pretty solid Mono and Meko, arguably one of the best tank duos in the league. I'm going to say this word a lot with NYXL, but consistency was kind of their thing.
Yeah.
They were just always on a clean, polished dive. You'd rarely see one overextended, making a mistake. That's just what won them all of those regular season games. So, and then in support, we saw a lot of Jonak and Arc. Jonak being a Zenyatta primarily player, and he also was our season 1 MVP. Pretty worth noting. And then Arc was on Mercy a lot. He's a main support in general. We just saw him on a lot of Mercy because of Mercy meta again. And then Onimo is their other one. Pretty versatile support player. I think he plays a lot of Lucio. We saw him occasionally in season 1, but again, it was a lot of Jonak and Arc. So all in all, this roster from top to bottom is just absolutely stacked. You can't say enough about them. As far as coaching goes, that is where if you were to find a spot on this team that could be critiqued a little bit in the offseason, it's their coaching staff changes. So you lost Wizard Yong to the Washington Justice in what is maybe their biggest move of the offseason. It was something that Kate really seemed like she wanted in Washington, was Wizard Yong and Janice, the old tank for NYXL. And then you also lose Bare Hands. These are two considered really top tier coaches in the scene. So I'll be interested to see how losing them goes. I think it will also show Pavane is their head coach. I think losing Wizard Yong especially will show how much Pavane was really in control last year versus how much Wizard Yong was doing. I don't know if we'll be able to see a lot of those results necessarily like in game, but at least in like the team presence, I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The other kind of blemish for NYXL recently is their T2 decision. It's been kind of all over the Twitter news, but XL2 Academy recently decided to, in an attempt to bolster their local fan base, I think, and really the reason is probably to save a lot of money. They decided to vault basically their entire team, or is it their entire team now? Is there anyone left?
Only Jur remains.
Only Jur, that's right.
There's one.
So the one and only Jur, which maybe he'll stay around, maybe he'll leave. I don't know. I wouldn't stay. But if they're paying him, maybe. But they're holding open tryouts, and they're in an attempt to get New York talent to fill their contenders team. There's been a lot of talk about this already, a lot of unhappy fans and unhappy people about it. But at the end of the day, we'll just have to see how it plays out. They're probably going to lose a lot more games. That's all I'll say. One other thing about NYXL outside of their roster and their coaches is really the brand identity and just the recognizability of NYXL. We talked about their logo just a second ago, and it makes me think of like the Nike logo. It's like when they first put out the Nike logo, were people really like, this is awesome? Like, this is a check mark. This is dumb. And then they saw it on stuff and they were like, holy shit, like this is iconic. And I really think the NYXL logo is at the iconic level for Overwatch League. It's just one of those things that you see on merch and with like the brand of like kind of like clothing and streetwear they've been putting out. It just looks so good. And so I think that's a big part of XL2's identity is they want to connect with their fans in a real way. A lot of people watching the Overwatch League are in their 20s and 30s, so they're doing that through streetwear and fashion. And I think it's been a super cool initiative, has really contributed well to the team's kind of overall vibe. And then last thing, I've been talking a lot, is the NYXL won the regular season of the Overwatch League Season 1. They were absolutely, by far and away, the best team in Season 1. So when it comes time to evaluate how they're going to do in Season 2, at the end of Season 1, there was a lot of talk of them sandbagging and different things like that. But Season 2, it's looking like they're going to be a top team. They didn't make a ton of changes. I feel like you have to rate them at least in the top 3. I can open the floor to you guys to see what you all think, but top to bottom, this team just looks so good. The coaching's so good. The players are so good. What do you guys think about NYXL going into Season 2?
So I think before we get into roster discussions, I will say that I think one of NYXL's first executive hirings outside of like their actual team structure was a marketing and brand executive who, don't quote me on this, but I'm 90% sure, used to work for Nike. So funny that you should bring up that comparison.
Makes sense.
Someone who had managed the development of Nike's brand throughout the world was then working with NYXL. I think she knew exactly what she was doing when she came on, and obviously has done a very good job there. But then as far as their roster goes, I agree that the roster itself, of course, is stacked. And I think in scrims, they'll quickly figure out who is consistently performing. And then when they hit live, they will figure out who is consistently performing on stage, which is the important part. And then just adjust from there. Stage 1 will be a perfect chance for them to test the waters, find out where can we put in Flower, where can we put in Nene, where can we put in Pine. Is one of those people consistently choking and just not able to hang anymore? Trade them. Bye.
Yeah.
You'll get a lot of money no matter what, because NYXL DPS means something pretty big. I'm curious to see, as you said, the effect of the coaching and management changes. I think that's something I'm going to approach in interviews for season 1, kind of to see like, hey, what do you think about the staff now versus the staff last season, and kind of how that's gone, because that will definitely decide if they can maintain that consistency or not. So it should be interesting to see.
I know that one thing that I was really interested in seeing with this team was just kind of seeing when they get into that tough spot. I mean, I feel like when you look at the NYXL, you can kind of think of them as the opposite of Runaway, where like when they needed to get that big win, when they were near the end, getting ready to go into the main playoff run, there was nothing there. All I thought about was the picture of the New York Giants for all the sports fans here when they're on that boat before the playoffs, and then they come in and they head to the playoffs and they just got destroyed.
Yeah.
And they just kind of lost it. And whether there's truth behind the sandbagging or not throughout the season, the magic wasn't there, and the magic somehow showed up in London's category, and they kind of took over. So I'm really interested to see, specifically in Pine, is he gonna kind of falter with this new talent here, or could Pine be the first one out of here? I mean, he did have to go home. I can't remember what stage he went back to Korea, but he did go back to Korea for a stage last season.
It was stage 2. Yeah, I actually interviewed him right after that, and talked about his sandbagging as well. He mentioned that the team was kind of trying to develop a new color, he described it, kind of like a new ethos, a way of approaching the game and their practice and everything. I imagine that conversation has been had again after their management changes and everything, which should be very interesting. But he did discuss with me that the pressure, honestly, of performing after, the first game he ever comes in, he probably has the best round on Ilios Lighthouse that anyone has ever had on Earth. Ever.
Yeah. So many times.
Undoubtedly. Everyone has. It was amazing. And after that, every time he came on stage, oh, it's Pine. Oh my God. He told me the pressure just got to him. It got to very many people. That was a very common thread in season 1, but he took it pretty hard. Like, he had a cult following, a great expectation, and he couldn't hang. So he stepped away, took his time. The organization has been supportive of him. I think, like, for any doubts we might have about their management structure, they know that they have to take care of their players if they want to succeed. So I don't think he'll struggle with that as much this season, but he will have to make sure that he can consistently outperform his peers. Otherwise, no matter how smooth he is about it, if he's underperforming, he's underperforming.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
I'm pretty disappointed in their tier 2 management of the team as a whole. When we look at Overwatch League, all I'm going to say is this is the most professional team that Owl has in terms of not only marketing and management, but also gameplay. You were saying consistency a lot, Goopy. I think right now it is unlikely for this team to lose in season 2. Of course, the person with the NYXL jersey is choking over here. So sorry if you can't hear my voice too well tonight. But when bringing it back to tier 2, we have this academy team making the decision to get rid of their superstar list of players, both Korean and English speaking. And when you think about this, yes, academy teams were invited back at the end of the season, regardless of results. Hooray for Florida Mayhem. But as we do go into season 1 of 2019, I do not think that will be extended again between season 1 and season 2. So a lot of the talk that has been going around is, will NYXL get relegated, so to say, if they decide to go, which they are, this route of having local talent.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, frankly, and it's a joke in my mind, the way that they have been handling this offseason. And as someone who really does care about the sustainability of tier 2 and wants to see it as a legitimate step on the ladder to path to pro, I think it's a bit of a slap in the face to their fans. So to end on a happy note, NYXL, it's going to win Overwatch League Season 2.
Ooh, okay.
Wow.
Katrina
heard
coming
it
in
right
with the bombs, dude. All right.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that. But
Yeah.
at the
I
same
mean,
time,
it's
I
just
was
reality.
so ready for that. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think both of those points are very true.
I was-
XL2, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask a prop bet kind of question for stage 1. So if we want to stay on XL2, we can, but we can.
I was just going to say, like, it's 90% chance this move does not pay off for XL2. They are immediately relegated. They immediately fire their New York locals, and now they're not grandfathered into the import rules. What do you do then? This is a very strong potential downward slope for XL2.
Yeah.
If it pays off, that's awesome. Sure, great. But it's
I don't think they need the academy team, to be completely honest.
That's
I don't think that's
it's not that they
something
need it. No, and obviously they
So-
couldn't even sign half the people there given their all Korean tier 1 roster, but just it's as you mentioned, it's a slap in the face. It sends a message, but not a good one. So
yeah, it's playing devil's advocate. I mean, it seems like it's probably a financial thing. So if they're doing this in order to pay players less money because their XL2 players were all really good, demanded a certain salary, they can then save that money by not doing that. But from a player perspective, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's essentially XL2 saying you're not worth the money, and we're just going to cut you, even though you've been putting all this time into the organization. So I agree. I think a slap in the face is a great way to describe it. Maybe this is indicative of some financial struggle at home with XL2s as an organization. I don't know if we want to go that far, conspiracy theorizing or not, but it's definitely something like that. But again, to stay on a happy note, I thought we could do an interesting prop bet for stage 1. So NYXL in stage 1 plays Boston, Washington, LA Valiant, Houston Outlaws, Toronto Defiant, and Seoul Dynasty.
that is an easy ass first stage.
Prop bet, do they sweep stage 1?
Yeah.
no.
No.
I think they do. We
Wow.
have 2-2. So
Split house. Yeah, I don't think they beat Valiant.
really,
That's my choice too.
If they're going to lose to anybody, it'll be Valiant. I think they could easily beat the rest, frankly. But
And don't forget too, when they play Toronto, Neko's back from his
True.
suspension.
that's a good point.
I think Houston's the toughest game because look at the history. I mean, I think Houston consistently gives. I mean, I'm not saying Houston's at the same level or anything like that, but Houston consistently takes NYXL to game 5s. I think NYXL is going to sweep it, but if it were to happen, I could see Houston doing it.
The Spitfire have never beaten the Outlaws. Outlaws are the best team in the Overwatch League.
I transitive property.
Let's not say that.
As
I
the
think
person with the math degree, I have to say
That's
people-
not how math
The
works.
commutative property of Overwatch. Okay, Muma told me about it, and I'm pretty sure he knows more about Overwatch than you. Okay, I think the Valiant could go toe to toe. I think the last time NYXL and the Valiant got together, the Valiant won stage 4.
I definitely
So-
moved the Valiant up within the last couple of weeks. Like just kind of thinking about the flexibility that they have on their roster. I mean, I feel like on paper, NYXL is just considered one of the best teams in the league with one of the best rosters in many aspects. But the Valiant they scream consistency, just like New York did. Like they've got that roster makeup, they've got their tanks, and oh lord, did they got their tanks between Space and
Yeah.
it's just
will we
too
be
good.
out the GOATS meta by the time New York and Valiant face off? And if
Probably
so, will the 5 DPS that won't be used matter at all for New York? Will Meko and Mono be able to face off against Space and Fate?
Yes.
Will
It's a great matchup. It's a great matchup.
That is a great matchup.
Ark and Jonak
Either way.
versus Custa and whoever's at flex support? I don't know.
Is it Yaki and Kareev?
Whew.
Yeah,
And
yes,
Is it
exactly.
Yaki?
One of them.
Yeah.
It's
But anyway, I thought it was
Jonak.
just
Okay.
thought it was an interesting prop bet discussion. Could be interesting to keep an eye on. I love those kinds of things, but
I think NYXL could sweep.
yeah,
definitely.
I think at least one of those teams will upset them.
Sure.
But it's still looking like NYXL are going to take 80% or more of their matches throughout the season and very potentially be playoff contenders again. And I don't think they'll go back to playing Minecraft as soon as they secure the #1 seed. I think they've got that one figured out pretty well at this point.
Does not work.
Sea of Thieves
Hopefully.
time, probably, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a new thing.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Well, we'll have to check back in after stage 1. The 4 of us are checking back in on this. But
Definitely.
I think for the sake of time, we probably need to move on to our second team. We hinted at the beginning. We're going to be talking about the Paris Eternal, and I believe Katrina is going to be taking the lead on this one.
All right, so the Paris Eternal is one of our new expansion teams, and they are the sole team that is completely European. That is their main brand. That is their main trademark. Everyone will be supporting them. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people will be supporting them because of that specific fact. We do have some very familiar players on this roster. First of all, we have Overwatch League veterans Finzi and Soon from the LA Valiant. Finzi was not on the stage too often due to space, playing Diva for Valiant. But of course, Soon is one of the favorites of Overwatch League, I think is fair to say. With his Widowmaker, his Tracer play, his hit scan play is definitely a standout. And we do have Shadowburn, once again, a player who did not see so much stage time after stage 2 due to EQO better integrating into the Philadelphia Fusion's DPS lineup. Shadowburn was more known for his cautious play, and when you have your team full of fraggies and pocos, it kind of helps to have someone just as aggressive. 2 other players I'd like to highlight. There are a lot more, of course, but Ben Best and Cruz really did show their worth in Overwatch World Cup, with Cruz, Lucio on Great Britain, as well as Ben Best playing that main tank role, predominantly the Reinhardt for France. So I still don't think that's the biggest superstar on the team. Coach Damon.
Mm-hmm.
Coach
Okay.
has great synergy with Soon. And of course, all of the French additional talent, having had his experience in World Cup and Overwatch League in the past. Sorry. A quote that I have really quickly that I think kind of illustrates how even he thinks this season will go. I'm going to shorten this up a bit. Even the gems that aren't polished yet, by bringing them into a high-level league and with actual good coaching, these raw gems will shine. This is what Damon has said. Saying, once again, players have great potential. I think we're coming in as underdogs. It's going to be a really tough season. And I need the players to not focus too much on victory or defeat, or being a sub or a starter, but focus on training as the most important thing to achieve those results. So that sounds like a brilliant mentality coming from Damon, and a very realistic one. In that, especially with the tank lineup, Ben Best is Solo Reinhardt. I believe Cloudy is the other main tank.
Mm-hmm.
He does have a better Winston and Orisa than Ben Best. So we will see a lot of swapping coming in, probably a lot of competition between roles. And, excuse me, a lot of these players have contenders, World Cup, Overwatch League experience, but they are not the best. And Damon knows that. This is kind of a building up season. They're trying to build up an excellent foundation, great chemistry for European Overwatch, trying to get the synergy between all of these players. This is a very DPS-led team with Soon and Shadowburn. Those are your stars. You have mediocre tanks. Okay,
I might disagree with you there.
That's okay.
I think Ben Best is one of the best Reinhardts in Europe.
I'd love to see Ben Best versus Gushue or Gesture or Mono.
Yeah.
You won't be seeing Ben Best because he'll be in Spawn. But this is ultimately not a playoff team.
Slap me across the face there.
I'm sorry, but I think Ben Best has great potential. I don't see him being that center of the composition that you need to be with what's most likely going to be Zen Goats. If you're playing Zen Goats against Ben Best, especially against who are they playing against first again? They're playing against London Spitfire first.
London, yeah, first game. London, Gladiators, Atlanta, Vancouver, San Francisco, Washington. That is a
very tough schedule.
Wow. That's 5 losses. Maybe.
Yeah, it might be.
So
Wow.
I'm sorry. I have a lot of
Oh.
respect for those on Paris. It's just realistically, this is not going to be a great record-based season for them.
Yeah.
I feel we should clarify as well that I think all of us universally are pretty low on Paris, but
Mhm.
damned if we don't want Paris to really surprise
Right.
us,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah, of
I think
course.
that would be one of the best storylines of the whole season. Nobody really thinks, kind of like Florida last season, and Florida more than earned it. An all European roster will not be able to withstand Koreans or mixed rosters or anything like that. And Florida sure proved that, although that was largely off the back of some terrible management and coaching overall. I think
Beep,
Paris will
beep.
be able to, yeah, ride the bus, man. I think Paris has the roster talent and maybe not the synergy, but at least the individual mechanical ability that Florida had. But also, they have coaches that aren't dumb,
So good coaching.
right? So
True.
if their coaches can
No.
do what Florida's coaches were not able to do, they could potentially turn an all EU roster into a roster that is actually respectable. And while
Yes.
that might not necessarily mean top five or anything crazy like that, it would certainly mean better than the 0-40 team, which would be great. I would really like to see Paris not second to last against a team that is 0-28 or whatever the lowest team ends up being, because that's ridiculous. And frankly, no EU Overwatch player would ever get a job again if that happened. It would be over. The EU Overwatch scene would die because no player would be seen as good enough for the Overwatch League after 2 consecutive seasons of EU talent being crushed under the heels of American and Korean talent. I don't think that's where I want Europe to end up in the Overwatch scene, because we see some crazy stuff out of Europe consistently. So I want to see Paris really step up into this. They're going to need, and they know it, they're going to need to step up. So
Yeah.
if it was going to happen, it would happen this season.
I think what Damon said about the kind of forming the raw gems into talent and this being a developmental season, I think is really important for this team to realize. I think a lot of these players are young. I've being a bit of a head case, and maybe some of the other players are too. I'm not really sure, but these players really do need to stay disciplined and understand that this is a building year. It's kind of like San Francisco Shock season 1. I don't think they're going to take the championship this year. I don't think they're building to do that. I think they're building, like we've talked about, to have a European team that can at least prove it can compete with Overwatch League talent, across the board. But, I think that mentality will be huge. I'm glad they have good coaching, and I'm glad they've invested in coaching. When the Sky Foxes experiment was going on, I was really high on coaching in Overwatch, and I still am. I think coaching is really important if you can get it right. I thought the Sky Foxes thing would work. I think it didn't work for other reasons besides the coaching, but still. But I really hope Paris can prove here that if you have a great staff of coaches and you prioritize that, you can form these kind of raw players into a talented, well-oiled machine and have them be a contending team in 2 to 3 years. That would be, for me personally, in my agenda of what I want to push onto this Overwatch League narrative. That'd be cool,
Yeah.
because I'd love to see coaching like really matter for a team. So, will it be this year? I don't think so. I put them at 18. I tweeted it today on my power rankings. I have them really low. Like, I'm really not high on them. But I'm rooting for them. They have the sickest jerseys in the league. Cool color scheme.
Hot take.
Yeah, that's kind of a hot take too. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else on them.
With Paris, I also have them low. I think we've all established that they're probably a bottom quarter in our rankings, essentially. I'm just I look at the flex positions on the team, and that's the worry part. Like you said, Ben Best impresses you. I look at Cruz, and I look at what he did over in the World Cup. That was insane, and he's been there. He's been involved with a lot of pro talent over the years. So I really look at them or Cruz as a main support and see a lot of foundation there. Soon, I think, is just a lockdown. He'll be starting every game practically. But then I kind of look at Finzi and I go, eh. And then I look at, I'm sorry, is it HYP or HIP?
Hip.
Eh. But I also don't watch a lot of like the contenders and that kind of stuff, so I've missed out on a lot of this. And then with Shadowburn 2, does he still have it? And if he's still got it, the whole DPS centric idea I can get behind. I can get behind the aggressive aggro potential of a tank DPS, overwhelming dive potential. But like lot of questions that I have. Like I compare them to a team like Shanghai, and I think maybe Shanghai can pull it out. To compare them to a team like Houston, I'm down on Houston, but I still think Houston will challenge them in a game if you put
Yeah.
them head to head with a lot of teams. And then they've got that rough schedule to start.
Yeah.
I'm really going to be watching going from stage 1 to stage 2 how they rebound, because
Yeah.
they're going to have at least 3 losses in these first 5 games. That's a lot of talent they're going against.
Yep.
That's where hopefully the good coaching comes in.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's going to take a minute for them to rev up the engines. I'm also very curious now that if we're going to start looking further into the future and understanding that this is a developmental year, what kind of turnaround do we see between season 2 Paris and season 3 Paris when they're at home in France? What kind of crazy French baguette wielding shenanigans will they get up to? What kind of crowd is going to be singing the French national anthem and like lighting the Eiffel Tower on fire and doing what French people do when they're hyped about a team? And how much will that fuel the Paris Eternal?
Yeah.
This is a team that needs a contenders team, I think. Like
They
I don't
do.
know how necessarily with being in the EU and stuff like that, because I don't know.
They can have an EU team. Yeah.
In EU contenders, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that they would be all set with that, and I think that that's where they're going to make their money. I mean, you look at a team like Fusion and A contenders, they're doing it right. Clearly, 3 straight championship runs.
Yeah.
If a team can embody what Philly's doing, and I think a majority of these teams can, as long as you get the right management and the right scouting potential, but they need to have a contenders roster.
Yeah. I agree. It'll be interesting to watch.
Speaking of Fusion Uni and their excellent contenders run, let's talk about our next team, the Philadelphia Fusion. Connor, I believe you're leading us on that one.
Yeah, I can start us off. So Philadelphia Fusion, it's not like the team I root for necessarily. It's not my favorite team. I am wearing a shirt right now, Philadelphia versus everyone. But it is by far my favorite team that has been built. Like I love the way this team has been built more than any other team. And I believe that because this is an organization and a team that values player health, I think, as the highest standard. This is a team that had a rocky season, kind of touch and go, really streaky. Once they got Sato back in the lineup, who was a suspended tank player in season 1, came back, did really well, kind of propelled them to that next level. They were streaky during the season, but once they got in the playoffs, and a lot of the other teams seemed like maybe they were burning out, or they were just the wear and tear from the season was too much. Philly heated up more than anyone else, got to the finals, and they were outplayed, outskilled by London in kind of that one final push matchup. But they worked the playoffs and did incredibly well, much better than everyone had anticipated them to do. So looking at this roster, this is the most diverse roster of any that we've looked at so far. I think it's the most diverse in the league. At 8 different nationalities. Only 2 players in the starting roster are the same. No, only 2 players in the starting roster are the same nationality, and it's Carpe and Sato being South Korean. That's an insane level of diversity. And just touching on that, getting players from 8 different countries in the same house, working together on the same thing, that's got to be such a great kind of worldview builder for these guys, just as this whole experience is going on. That's just a really cool thing. Coaching staff, mostly American. There's a couple Korean coaches as well, largely for translation and strategy for the Korean players as well. But looking at this roster, players I want to highlight in particular, their support line of Boombox and Neptuno was really solid last year. People have questioned whether they really are as good as we think they are, and maybe Boombox isn't quite the level that he's been cracked up to be. But I would actually say that I think this is one of the better support lines, most reliable support lines in the Overwatch League, especially looking at a Western support line. Tanks, you have Fraggy, Sato, and Poco. Poco being the Diva Master, crazy bombs in season 1, had some of the, in any frag video you watch, there's going to be a Poco bomb somewhere in there. It's become iconic. Fraggy, kind of the same way. I mean, just crazy Reinhardt charges, so aggressive. He didn't play a lot once Sato came in, but still. And then you have DPS Carpe, who almost won Overwatch League season 1 MVP. Incredible player. He had a take on Lijiang Tower where EQO was flying around, but he essentially kills 5 players. It's one of the most iconic Overwatch videos out there. And then EQO, as I mentioned, is a similar player to Libero and Tavik. We're talking about these versatile players today. EQO can play everything. He's a lot of the reason Shadowburn's on Paris right now is like we talked about. He just kind of lit up when they put him in, and he did really well. So this team financially is owned by Comcast, where we talked about Atlanta last week being owned by Cox Communications. And so that is, again, Thibble's doing the money signs. That's a lot of good resources. That's a solid backing. And I think that is evident when we look at their T2 scene and their Overwatch League scene. They're just incredibly well taken care of. There's a lot of resources put into this team, a lot of resources putting into the T2 team, which is part of the reason they've won the last 3 seasons of NA contenders in pretty dominant fashion. I mean, Fusion University this year, their academy team looked shaky in the regular season some, but when playoffs came around, I mean, they closed out every game and they just were on another level again, especially in the finals against Atlanta.
I think it's important to mention that the shaky for Fusion Uni was that they were taken to map 5 like 1 or 2 times more than normal before winning and still going undefeated.
Well, that's what happened to the Fusion last season.
Yeah. Even shaky for them is really good.
Right.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And so one last kind of note, again, talking about these resources being poured into the team. There are 12 members on the staff. Now that includes 3 streamers. So you're pretty much talking about 9. And then that also does include the president and CFO. I don't know how involved they are. But if you're putting 12 members on staff outside of the roster, plus paying a roster, to me, what this does is, again, it's kind of like NYXL. You're building a brand, you're building an identity, a culture of the Philadelphia Fusion. I think if you have 3 streamers doing that and all the staff and these players, a good T2 team, a pretty good local presence from what I've heard, you're doing that really, really well. So I'm really high on Philly, and it has led me to be probably pretty biased in my ranking of them for season 2, where I have them in the top 3. I won't reveal which in that top 3 they are, but I do think they will compete with, NYXL and London and those top tier teams this season. If nothing else, just because the players will be able to last through any sort of mental endurance or tough situations they're in because of the good management. So what do you guys think about Philly in general?
Well, I really think this team, I kind of compared these 2 teams, or this team along with, I thought that these teams had issues because of roster size that disallowed them from having the consistency. And I think that was the biggest aspect of why they were inconsistent throughout near the end of the stages until they started getting hot for the playoff run. I mean, there were matches when they would put Sato and Hotba in and you'd think, where's Poco? I mean, to be fair with Fraggy, he had his ups and downs, but Poco was just consistent for that team. It was a great diva for them, a great flex tank that just got the job done. And now also the changeover from Shadowburn to EQO, that happened so seamlessly. The comms that EQO offered, just the mechanical ability that EQO offered. They've had an off season to be able to perfect this kind of stuff. And it is a great management system that we said before. Is this a team that in the long off season that we're finishing up right now is going to have used it properly and is going to benefit from it? Because I think they are. I think that this is a team that you look at that top 3, and for me, which is London, Philly, and NYXL, I feel like you could put any of those 3 teams in almost any order there, just based on how elite that all these teams are. So when I look at Philly, I think the biggest thing is going to be just ironing out that final roster and what's going to be the most effective for them, because Sato being back is huge, I think. I mean, he missed a lot. It was all of stage 1, if I recall, in season 1.
All of the first 3 stages. It was
it was
even more than that. Holy smokes!
It was
the biggest suspension the league has ever had by a lot.
I hope it's the biggest one they will have in general.
No.
But yeah, I really think it's going to be a really new tempo coming out in this first one, and I would dare say that they are my pick for the season opener against London. I'm not for any necessarily analytical reasons, but I'm rooting for.
Just want to feel it. You got the feeling.
I want to feel like it.
Okay. I wanted to touch on the staff question or point that was brought up earlier and kind of break down what they've got. I've talked to a number of their staff before and read interviews. Humble brag, I was one of the first people to interview Philly president Tucker Roberts over at Media Day preseason 1. He and Joe Marsh, their CFO, handle most of their like business branding stuff and are liaisons between Comcast, big money, and little tiny baby Overwatch people like us. They do their job very well. They're super passionate about this project. He described it as like a startup, but like way cooler and with video games, which sounds pretty great to me. Kirby, I have no clue. He's director of Overwatch operations. I suppose that just means he oversees the rest of the staff and like advises them or communicates between the first two, the business guys, and then the rest of them, something like that. You got Thelonious and Voyager, who are manager and assistant manager. I assume standard like scrim stuff, appearances, media management, and things of that nature. You got Heidi, the chef, who's just the best, who everybody loves so much. She's the best. Nametweet and Hayes were announced as co-head coaches, which should be interesting, but not necessarily the end of the world. And then BZ maintains his position as analyst, and then you got the 3 streamers. So it's not like too many cooks in the kitchen sort of situation. I'm sure it's all fairly well organized and not too hectic. But yeah, there are a lot of them. It looks like everybody has a fairly clear job and will avoid stepping on toes, except maybe the co-head coaches. But even then, they have to have been able to figure that out if they were going to go in that direction.
I agree. All right. Well, have we covered Philly sufficiently, team? Are we good?
Me like Philly.
All right.
I think I'm a little less optimistic than all of you, but
I'm pretty not optimistic, frankly. What are their first games coming up in the stage?
London is first.
London is
no,
their
like the
opener.
stage.
Atlanta after London, then Florida, Dallas, Washington, and the Valiant.
Oh, that's a nice stage.
I think they win.
It is a nice stage.
5 out of 6.
I think they win 3.
Whoa!
To be fair, I know exactly why you're saying that, and I'm also high on Dallas. I think that's a really talented roster, and I think it's going to be one that's going to come out and just go swinging. But I think that's one of those close matches, you know.
Kind of a side note. You said Dallas, and I thought of Fact, who I kind of want for my fantasy team. We should have a fantasy thing. We should have.
Why is that already done? Gosh,
we'll figure that out.
Let's make that happen. Okay, Winston's Lab. For those of you who don't know, has a great fantasy league setup. You should do it with your friends. There's also public leagues, but just get on the competition ride with us. It's going to be a good time. But Philly, they'll do well. They'll be a playoff team, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Quick Open Division update for you guys, because we totally forgot about that. Mirage are currently up 2-1 against Path to Poverty in this best of 7. They were held on second Volskaya for map 4, and now Path to Poverty need a point and a tick to tie the series at 2-2. There you go. First to 4 wins there. It is nowhere near over and looks like an interesting game, but not as interesting as WatchHaus. Especially when we start talking about our next team, which is... I just closed the document.
The Toronto Defiant.
Take it away, Dave.
I'm supposed to... Okay, I got it.
With our Toronto Defiant Game Haus beat writer expert, Dave.
Expert. Okay, cool.
Expert,
yeah. All right, cool. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about like the beginnings of Toronto, because like this is a new roster, and we don't have any season 1 visuals of this team yet, but I kind of wanted to go over just how impressed I am with the marketing of this team and the coaching staff and just management in general. First of all, I picked this team mostly because I'm for Buffalo, and I mean Canada's and poutine are Canadians and poutine are just the greatest things in the world. And it's close. I figured if I'd ever get the opportunity to go and get a first-hand interview with any of these players if they're visiting, Toronto would be the team that I wanted to look at. Obviously, I'm a Seoul fan because of Fisher. I like a lot of teams, though. Philly's up there. I'm a big fan of the Gladiators still. But I look at Toronto, and they immediately caught my eye. First of all, with the branding and the marketing, the team itself is owned by Overactive Media, and they're co-founded by Overactive Media and Splice, which is an American esports organization, actually located in Rochester, which I just found out recently. So that's going to help link with the Western New York, Toronto areas, hopefully. As for Overactive Media, they've been growing up in the Canadian or up in Canada recently, and they found an opportunity or saw an opportunity to bring the second Canadian team to Canada, obviously with Vancouver being the first and now Toronto being on the East Coast. I think this team is set up for 3 or 4 rivalries. I feel like Boston, Toronto is going to be a big thing. I feel like Vancouver and Toronto is going to be a big thing. Mostly, I think that this team is just going to impress in general because of the management that they have on top of all of them. Going back to Overactive Media a little bit, I kind of wanted to mention a few things about their president and CEO, Chris Overholt. This fellow, has a lot of experience in this kind of environment. He was the vice president of sales and services with MLSE, which is the owning company of the Toronto Raptors and Maple Leafs, executive vice president of the Florida Panthers, former vice president of the Miami Dolphins and their stadium, Sun Life Stadium.
Jeez.
He's been in this type of environment for so long that I expected, once I saw at the reveal event and I met this Chris Overholt, that they were going to kind of blow it out of the water with their marketing. I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to find or see their last roster reveal video where they've got all the players slowly
It was
walking
so
up.
sick.
It was so sick, and it put
Yeah.
all the feels, and I was ready to go. But it was really impressive, like, to me, the videography that they were doing with it and how they're trying to reach out to the Toronto esports fan, the Defiant. People count us out. The Maple Leafs have been counted out for years, and as a Sabres fan, I hate
For good reason.
but I'm definitely all in on Fire based on management. Coaching wise, so looking at the GM to start things out, their GM was obviously Jay. He was involved with Splice before he was sent into this esport or watch esport directive, and as soon as he was set out on this mission, he decided that he wanted to have a coaching staff before he even thought about looking at any of these players. Obviously, to a lot of people, this could be a really great move. I view it as a great move, especially because they were able to land a great talent like Bishop at head coach. As for Bishop, let me just scroll down to my notes a little bit. Former London Spitfire head coach, played a huge role in melding those two rosters together of GC Busan and Kangdu Panthera. Now, Bishop did leave, I believe it was in March of last year, left the team for reasons back home to go home and see his family. There was no negative impacts about his coaching style, especially after winning stage 1, that we could see. That he left London, and then if I recall, he just went on home, and then he was looking for that new opportunity and wanted to get that opportunity with Toronto. From what I've heard, Jay sat down with Bishop and they immediately hit it off and figured out that their ideas of how to get this team set up and ready for the future and potentially even in a win now mode, they lined up perfectly. And then the two of them worked to bring in the rest of their coaching staff, which includes Bubbly, originally from the Seoul Dynasty, and Don, originally of the LA Valiant. Bubbly left Seoul. I can't remember. I didn't actually take a note on when he left Seoul or why he left Seoul.
I'll pull it.
And then I know Don departed from the Valiant directly after preseason, so he didn't have any regular season action with the Valiant. After he left the Valiant, he went in to start coaching PUBG for the OPGG Rangers, and now we find him over here with Toronto Defiant. The way the coaching staff is divvied up, because along with the coaching staff, they also have a new analyst that they brought on, which would be Baroy. Created Winston's Lab, was a computer science major, and I don't know about you guys, but Winston's Lab, it's been kind of revolutionary in a game where numbers and analytics can mean potentially so little because of the changes from the devs and how contextual the game is. It was a really great first go at trying to quantify the numbers of Overwatch and how to get a different perspective of Overwatch. And how many people will value that, that's up to them to decide. But I've always been a numbers guy, and I definitely am looking forward to seeing what Baroy will be able to bring to this team as an analyst. Bishop is bilingual, so Baroy will be contacting and speaking with Bishop directly with what Baroy has been finding, and then Bishop is going to be going to Bubbly, who is the one-on-one coach for the Valiant, who will be doing a lot of the one-on-one performance reviews with players, and then he's also going to be going to Don, obviously. And Don's going to be leading a lot of the daily team reviews. So I look at like the coaching system and I think, wow, not only is management really balanced out and they know what they're doing, the coaching staff everyone has their role and everyone knows how to communicate. Kind of looking more at the team now, it's an all Korean roster. Unlike Florida, we do have Korean coaches on this team. So I definitely think that wasn't a shot at Florida, but I definitely think that having that coaching setup for these players is going to be huge. Roster wise, it's made up of a core of 3 veterans and 3 players from O2 Ardian. The veterans I'll touch on first. I'll start with team captain Envy. Envy departed the Valiant early on in his tenure with the Valiant. It was a fan favorite. I mean, everyone Envy and Fate. It was a great pairing of tanks, very aggressive, very aggro. But there was a falling through with just the team interaction with Envy, I guess, from what I've seen. And thankfully, it had nothing to do. Otherwise, he wouldn't be captain of the Toronto Defiant right now. But it will be interesting for me to see what Envy will bring to the team, whether it'll be a negative internal development or some negative internal development, or if it's going to meld and mesh well with this roster. So I'm excited to see what Envy can do. I'm really excited for Neko. Neko's arrival from Boston, I think, is a really big deal. I also think Neko not playing for 3 games because of a suspension is an even bigger deal. But kind of going back to Neko just arriving with Toronto, he played a huge role in the undefeated run for Boston in Stage 3 of Season 1. I mean, him and Stryker really anchored that team. Now, I don't want to downplay Aim God's time with Boston as well after Neko and his time with Boston started on the downhill. Aim God did step in and I thought filled in his shoes very well, nearly having about the same kill potential throughout a game as Neko, with also more survivability than Neko did overall, with Neko averaging 8 deaths per map and Aim God averaging only 6. I just think he's an anchor. I mean, Aid is a great main support for the team, but I feel like the communication and the experience that Neko has in the support line is going to bring out the talent of their main support Aid, who obviously is no slouch in his own right. The last veteran that I want to touch on is Asher. Asher is coming over from the Gladiators. Didn't see an awful lot of action in Season 1. Had enough to kind of get a sample size of Asher. But just with the way the meta is set right now, he's a hit scan, Tracer, McCree, Widow, flex focus. I just don't see it paying dividends right now. I kind of look more at the O2 Ardian core to be taking a hold of the DPS role with this team. But Asher, I think, is going to be a great veteran presence. And once again, a talented player, like a really great presence on the team and a lot of kill potential with Asher being in there. Looking at the Ardian core, and this is where I'm super excited about this. Yakpung. This team's tank core is so underrated in my eyes. And I just don't get it. I mean, O2 Ardian, when they were in Season 1, if I had notes on this because I didn't want to forget because I thought it was rude. But in Season 1 of Contenders, they were second, I believe, if I recall.
O2 Ardian?
Yes. In the first season, they finished second. It was a very dive-focused meta. I feel like the meta really benefited them in that run because of the roster that they had set up with that. But then even going into Season 2 of Contenders, people forget that in the group stage, they had the same record as Runaway in Season 2 of Contenders, and then they fell off in the playoffs. I think that this was the most talented mechanically. They acquired the most talented players mechanically that Ardian had to offer. Yakpung to me is a dominant Winston, and I think a lot of teams are going to realize this season that having a Winston be able to dominate a field, much like Hangzhou did with making the decision to bring on Guxue, I think it's going to really pay off because I think with the armor changes really nerfing Winston's damage output, there's already talk about that being fixed, where Winston's going to have a little bit more impact as well on the gameplay. It's such an influential alt. We have a lot of Reinhardt going on right now, and I know that Yakpung can play Reinhardt, but Winston is what he's known for. And I'm really excited to see a Winston Diva, Winston Hammond, that kind of stuff be thrown out here for this team dive-wise. The support lineup I'm really happy about. And then you look at the DPS group, which is the other 2 core players from O2 Ardian in Stellar and Ivy. Now, from what I found between the 2 of them, Ivy's more of the projectile-based player, has a real opportunity to really contend with other higher tier DPS this season. And Stellar confused me initially. I needed to watch some VODs on O2 Ardian And it was tough for me to find a VOD with Ivy, Yakpung, and Stellar all participating in the map because of Climax being there. And in an interview I'm sorry, not in an interview, but during the Oversight podcast with Thorne and Monte Cristo, they spoke with Jay. And he was talking about the reason why they brought on Stellar instead of Climax. And what they highlighted was the fact that Ivy is, I'm trying to word the even nicer than they worded it on the podcast, but he's a do first think later kind of player. He wants to react to something, wants to make the big move, wants to make the big play, and doesn't maybe address the consequences of that play. Whereas a player like Stellar has good comms, was considering or considerably a bench rider with O2 Ardiant and would come in and flex in a lot of roles, but puts a lot of thought into the game. And from what they said was Climax played a little bit more like Ivy did. And they wanted to bring Stellar in because they wanted to be able to balance out that aggressiveness from their projectile DPS with a more conservative hit scan DPS that's going to be able to help set up plays more and be able to help just bring the communication on through the DPS department there. So, like I said, this team is going to be built around aggression. It's not going to be a very defensive themed team. I picture this team, especially if Dive becomes meta again, just being unrelenting force. It's going to be just like the TGH talent takedown a couple of days ago, where it was 5 maps to nothing. They're just not going to stop. I kind of listed a couple pros and cons just to kind of synopsis everything together. Looking at pros, scouting, coaching, management, and analytical research overall are just going to be key factors with this team. I think the team is well scouted. I think it's well managed, and I really think it's going to be well coached. And adding in that whole new aspect of Baroy and what he'll be able to bring in with his data that he'll be collecting, I think that this is going to be a team that's going to surprise a lot of people just with comps and strategies. And we saw that big move by the Gladiators in the playoffs. We could be seeing even more big plays like that from these teams that want to stand out and make a name for themselves, especially in these new rosters. Like I said, it's full Korean. They have a clear vision for the future. They want to be innovators. They don't want to be people trying to catch up to everyone else. They want to get ahead of the game and make people be chasing their coattails. And apart from the aggressive tank line, I think that Ivy has a real chance, if those aggressive plays don't screw them over, to really stand out as a really big DPS option for this team, just kind of like how EQO and players like Fleta and Prophet did for their respective teams. Cons. Looking at stage 1, it is rough. It is a rough stage 1 schedule. Starting out against Houston, that's even a potential loss. Atlanta, I'm very high on. Valiant, I'm very high on. And all 3 of those are without their starting Zenyatta expert, Neko. And their other support that they have on their roster, Roki, as far as I know, doesn't impress on Zenyatta. As far as I know, he's also going to be their sub main support, if I recall. So I'm concerned about this team's comp flexibility in those first 3 matchups, where some teams will be like, okay, they won't be able to run a Zenyatta to counter such and such. We'll just run such and such. And then kind of looking at more cons, difficult schedule. The lack of tank flexibility does worry me, but as long as they can make sure that their aggression can take over, I think that that's not going to be as big of an issue. And I am a little worried about Stellar's role. Like I said, Climax did play a lot more than Stellar did. It'll be interesting to see what they are doing with Stellar behind the curtains that we can't see yet. All in all, I'm very optimistic for this team. Not in stage 1. It'll be a slow start, but after that slow start, then they get NYXL. Still kind of rough, but you get Neko back, so that could be a nice rallying cry. And then they get Boston and Chengdu, and then I believe they close out. I can't see the rest of the schedule.
That's a rematch and a half there against Boston.
Yeah.
Right.
Should be fun to see.
I'm so excited to see Neko go against. That week 4 is going to be pretty exciting with NYXL and Boston, because if they can put on a good showing against NYXL and potentially win, getting ahead of myself, that's a huge turnaround for a team that might start 0-3 and then heading into stage.
Yeah.
And they're playing Hangzhou to finish the stage.
Got it. That's pretty huge. I mean, you really well covered that. Really, again,
Damn,
super
Dave.
well done. Yeah, did your research.
Excellent.
Yeah. I think you got a lot of it right. I think that I would add, I think this is going to not only be an aggressive team, I think it's going to be a very calculated team. I think it will be like a Boston Dive kind of calculated aggression, where especially if Baroy is able to really contribute in his analyst role, I think he will be able to look at isolated fights and critique Are we dying more when we go to X point on the map than Y point? And he'll really potentially be able to make this a really like a statistical nightmare to go up against Toronto, because they will have all the best statistical options, available. And so I do agree they'll be incredibly aggressive. I think of all the new teams, they are one of the scariest. And I'm a lot more hyped for it. Like chat's saying, I'm a lot more hyped for it after hearing you talk about them too. So
Excellent. Would you guys want to give me your rankings of Toronto, or is that giving away too much?
Sure wouldn't. Not after how much of a fan you've shown yourself of them to be.
yeah, seriously, I don't want to. Let me pull
They're
up
like
my
teens,
book of power rankings here.
general
Let's see.
teens. They could float anywhere between 13 and 16, maybe-ish.
That's why I have them as 13. I'm keeping them out of the playoff run right now. I have actually Boston one spot ahead of them. I'm really high on Boston as well.
I have Toronto higher than you, Dave. I have Toronto higher than the Toronto fan.
I want to ask a question about
that part. Let's cut that part.
I want to talk about their DPS core. I think the points you brought up about Ivy and Stellar and managing aggression and utilizing your perhaps increased coaching capabilities to maybe rein them back a little bit could be a thing. I just want to know if Stellar really starts to struggle and you really need a hit scan DPS, maybe like an Ashe player or whatever, do you bring out your designated Asher?
Oh.
Boom, that was just for that pun. Sorry. Do you think, really though, do you think Asher could potentially earn a starting spot even with the synergy that Ivy and Stellar have shown to have?
I definitely do. Like I said, Stellar, I'm a little shaky because I just didn't see enough in contenders from him where I'm saying that there's going to 100% start. Asher showed me in season 1, I mean, on a team that already had so much DPS and sheer hydration, and you bring Asher into it with the Gladiators, I'm sure that played a role in Asher not playing quite as much. And then you get the meta shift where you needed that Stellar Widowmaker, you had that Stellar Tracer time frame for him. But Asher will be able to fill a role on this team. I don't view any 2 DPS on this team as the lockdown combo. I think kind of like NYXL, where they're going to flex Pine in or they're going to flex Flower in, I think that Asher is going to play that role, and each one of them is going to have where they're going to shine the most.
And going way, 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 way back to when you first started talking about the coaching staff and everything, Don, who used to be known as Ooks, left the LA Valiant in January, which was very, very early. And Bubbly left Seoul in July, alongside most of the coaches from Seoul when they did their complete staff, like rebuild. There were too many cooks, start over sort of purge. So interesting differences in when they left their teams and what that says potentially about the coaching philosophies of the teams they left, but also potentially their performance as coaches.
For sure.
Yeah. Well,
damn, you did a really good job.
That made me
I'm
feel
glad.
like
you covered all the bases.
People are getting excited about Toronto, and I'm telling you, get on it now.
I need to, man, I should have done more research. Jesus.
Hashtag get Dave a jersey.
Yeah,
there we go.
Hashtag that.
We'll make it happen. We got some clout.
You hear that, bosses? I need more money.
Yeah, okay. If anybody's going to cry for that, it's me. God, I so desperately need bread. And speaking of players and teams that need some bread. No, Katrina, wait, if you had a point.
No,
please.
I was just going to make a snarky political comment.
Yes?
I like politics.
About lack of money and not paying. Anyways, we are going to talk about the Washington Justice.
Yeah. Good. Speaking of politics, it's man, it's gotta suck for the Washington Justice marketing department.
Yeah.
To kind of hey, we're associated with America. Overwatch. Woo! Man, I actually really like the Washington Justice, which is why I'm probably going to be doing most of the talking about this team. Let me pull up my notes in the doobly-doo.
Yeah, do you know if this team is shut down with the government, Mr. Thibble?
They are not. No, they are not. First off, the government is back for probably. They figured that out for a couple weeks. And no, they are not shut down. They have been working hard. I've been occasionally chitter-chattering with a couple Washington people, just seeing how they're doing. It looks like they're doing okay. They took a lot of cool slow motion shots at Media Day the other day, and that was neat. So this is a very interesting team. I didn't take too many notes on it because we're just going to feel this one out. There's not a lot of concrete stuff out there for this team like there is for the Defiant, I guess.
Apparently.
Philly and New York and all these things. This is a team full of unknowns. A couple things that we do know that many people have talked about that I will also discuss, but plenty of things that are we're just gonna have to wait and see. I think the big things to start with are the stuff that we do know, which is going to be Jonas and Wizard Hyung coming from NYXL. I think that's a great storyline to see. I think Jonas, when he stepped up, he was able to play at Mono's level for at least the couple maps that they put him in on. He definitely was characterized rather by a more aggressive style, but he still communicated that well with his team, and he had arguably the best shot caller in the league to do it with. I think a good move that Washington made was finding a shot caller that can, I don't want to say equal Arc because there aren't really, I don't think there's anyone in the world really who can do that right now. But I think Phosix has a very similar style to what Arc was probably doing. I talked about Arc's like shot calling style with both Pine and Bonnie and Big Goose last season, trying to kind of pick the brains of main supports and how they see other main supports out there doing their thing. They described Arc as a very, not micromanaging, but very in-depth and detailed shot caller who will tell you exactly where to go and when. And I think if any shot caller that was in the LFT pool when Washington were looking that could do the same thing, it would be Phosix. He played for NRG and Envision, I believe, way back in the day. Oh, goodness. And did a great job, all in all. Well known for his educational streams where he discusses like stream of consciousness style, what he's doing and how he's playing and what he should have done and what his teammates should have done. He's big brain, as the kids say. And I think that is exactly the sort of thing Jonas needs to make sure that he and the backline are on the same page. So I think that's a good move based on a couple things we do know. I think that's supported by the signing of Wizard Young, who is a self-proclaimed genius. When he describes things that are very smart, he says, that's pretty Wizard Young. And I'm cool with that. It's joking. He's not super serious about it. He means that. He doesn't actually think he's like God's gift to Overwatch or anything, but he likes to have a little fun with it, and I can respect that because that's pretty much what I do all the time. I think in general, like, yeah, he's not like groundbreakingly good or anything, but NYXL had a damn good run, and he was helping with that at least. We don't know the percentage between him and Pavane or anything like that, but he was there in the kitchen when that stew was brewing, and it was delicious. So I'm very interested to see what kind of meal. This metaphor is falling off the tray.
Really doing good.
It's going to be good. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm losing it here, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Wizard Young can really like rally the troops here and make an interesting strategical case for his capability as a coach. He's supported by a lot of really good players, actually. I want to talk about players like Guido, who was flexing between like Zenyatta and Tracer last season. Awesome. What? Katrina, you're the Soul fan. Back me up on this. Pretty cool,
I don't think
right?
this is a good move at all.
Well, that's not where you were supposed to go.
Karina's just dumping on people.
Go ahead.
No, I don't mean that. No, I'm not trying to be mean. I really am not. It's just, I think right now, Guido has great potential, but has underperformed regularly. And I'm really concerned about Washington's roster, half American, half Korean. It's just, especially with them picking up Otto and Guido, two failed players from last year's Overwatch League.
You call Otto failed?
Otto's one of the shining points.
Otto,
I would add Janus.
He was on
failed players.
He was on an 0-40 team.
Okay,
yeah, but with players like altering Five King and Free Feel, the
What
one
I'm
thing
saying,
keeping Shanghai in the race was Otto, and I guess like Gaguri too. She was also.
What I'm saying is right now, this team seems confused on what direction they want to go. And I don't think that these experienced players, including Janus, are the ones that you create for your foundation.
Do you guys
I'll agree
believe
with that.
the allegations that budgetary concerns have hamstringed Washington's ability to put together a coherent roster? Do you
I mean,
believe
it
that?
looks like it based on the players, but right now we don't know anything about that for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
no basis, but it's a common thread that, oh yeah, of course this roster is a bunch of random like slapped together stuff. They didn't have any money. And I don't really think that's how that goes. But
Wasn't that Philly's narrative too last year?
Yeah,
But
that's
they
what I want
just
to say about Philly.
Yeah, that's the thing. This could be pretty bad and weird, but it could also be sort of like a Boston or Philly style. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're capable of. I don't know what they're capable of together, but maybe the management and the coaching staff can put together something interesting here and actually get a win or two. That's what I want to believe anyway, because the idea of a team going 0-28 because it's a bunch of random wahoos that you sign because you don't have any money is kind of a depressing storyline.
Tell me where you think they can potentially see a win. NYXL,
No,
London,
no,
Philly,
Oh, that is
maybe.
so
the
tough.
Shock,
maybe,
Oh, no way.
and-
No way in
and-
hell.
No.
and
and
Seoul.
and Seoul.
And
I
then,
think
And then they play Paris.
and then Paris. Paris could be the win.
Boom!
I think those last three games are where they have the greatest chance, but even then,
Yeah.
it's not that great. I'm
Right.
not gonna lie. I'm not high on Washington, but I want them to surprise me. I want them to exceed my expectations because right now my expectations are very low. I think there is potential. I think it is based entirely on the capability of their coaching and management staff to develop a roster of nobodies
Right.
slapped together into something that could look good, much like Boston did.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. I'm actually really high on this team's coaching, and I also don't buy the money narrative because I think they have a really good stacked coaching, lineup. I mean,
true.
I know Kate got Michael from last night's leftovers with her, but you do
The
have
good
Wizard
Michael.
Young. Say what?
The good Michael.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the one true Michael. And then you have
Sure.
Avala and Wizard Young. I mean, and there's several others as well. But I really do believe in the coaching staff of Washington. Now, I personally am really low on Janice. Actually, I think he was pretty subpar for NYXL, just personally. So I see where Katrina's coming from with kind of getting these broken Overwatch League talent, previous talent members. It kind of reminds me of what Mayhem Academy did, and that didn't pan out too good with their tank line.
There are many reasons for that one.
But that again, I'm not blaming those players entirely. But I do agree with you as well, though, Thibble. I think it could be a Boston kind of situation where they absolutely surprise. They put together a team, and it does really well. I just, on paper, this is not an appetizing team, an appetizing dish, to go with your metaphor, that I would want to eat or consume. I would rather have something else.
I know most people are in agreement with you, I would say. I just think I've got a weird perspective on it because, without leaking anything, because I would like to have a job in this industry at some point, I was in the room for a number of conversations that Washington management staff were having in regards to the building of their roster. And it was so much more than, and this is why I don't believe most of the common narratives, it was so much more than, oh goodness, we no longer have money. We still need to put a roster together, though. That's not how that conversation or any of those conversations went at all. There are things that management and coaching staff from Washington saw in all of these players that made them say, regardless of the amount of money that we may or may not have, we can do something with this. And I think that faith, at least, is worth something. I think being able to believe and have confidence in a squad that nobody else does is distinctly Overwatch. Remember a little team named Last Night's Leftovers, or Fenergaphy, or any of the ridiculous teams that we've had made of relative unknowns that have really surprised us. I would love for Washington to be in that rank. Will they? I don't know. There's certainly plenty to talk about in regards to, like, who the heck is Sam? Don't really know too much about him. Same with Hyonu. He's certainly quiet. But players like Corey and Stratus aren't too bad. Otto, I continue to disagree with Katrina. I think Otto was the best part of Shanghai in Season 1. I think Fozix is certainly smart and developmental, coachable, let's say. That's the buzzword that we want to hear. These are a lot of coachable players. And if you've got a good coach and some coachable players, you can put something together. That's my main point with Washington, I think. I don't think it does us too much service to really go into the past experience or capabilities of any of the players, because they're closing that door behind them. They are like, that is the past. None of that matters. We are going to take what we have right now in the present and go that way. So
Yeah.
it's a mentality I can respect.
I think us doing that to Washington would be a double standard because we didn't do it to Paris. I mean, Paris for me is really similar to Washington. I mean, you invested a lot in coaching with both teams. Both teams seem like they're not trying to win it all this year. They're building for 2-3 years down the line. And they're forming these raw material players. Forget about their past. Forget that Shadowburn, basically got ran out of Philly because he wasn't performing well. Forget the same about Janice never playing for NYXL. I think we should kind of put those, to be fair to both teams, on the same playing field and trust the coaches to mold these players into something new over a gradual period of time. Again, I think there are differences in those situations, not comparing, 1-to-1 on those, but to give Washington the benefit of a doubt, I think you could kind of draw the same comparison that they're like Paris in a way.
Yeah. And
at the same time,
go ahead.
Paris has a lot more contenders, Overwatch League, World Cup experience at that high level. So, I mean, I hate to be kind of being the bad guy tonight. It's just...
You love it.
No, I actually don't.
The realist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Continue and finish.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's just it's frustrating. I hope they do well, and in my heart of hearts, I do, but they won't. And it's just really frustrating because there is a lot of the potential that you were talking about, Thibble especially, but they aren't on the same. Comparing them to Paris is still comparing apples to oranges in my mind.
Man, this little scratch in your throat just makes you sound like you're about to start crying about it.
I know. I'm like, this is the real stuff right now.
Don't do this to me.
No. I mean, I know. I know I've been tough on them, but at the same, and I do, like, I legitimately think that, yes, I agree with you in that the coaching, oh my God, in that the coaching staff is great. I especially want Avala to succeed. Yeah. However, this is probably the worst team in the Overwatch League.
Not true.
And I don't think we can be honest with the people watching if we don't at least mention that this is in the bottom two.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
All
bottom
right,
two makes
Mayhem.
Bottom two makes me totally okay with that statement.
Yeah, that was
I just can't.
I'm not getting any joy from saying that, but
yeah. I agree. Okay, that's
just
fair. Making
sure we know at home.
Completely fair. Yeah.
Okay.
So you three have obviously had a lot of experience in the esports industry now. I'm going to backtrack us to the beginning of season 1, when everyone counted Boston out. Where do you, or what was your thinking when you were first introduced to that Boston roster and your expectations for them back in season 1, if you can go back that far?
They posted a PowerPoint on Twitter. It was disgusting. It looked so bad. It was the worst graphics I've ever seen in my life, except maybe Uprising Academy, who are equally bad right now, by the way.
To me, though, it just seemed like a disjointed. That was one of my big critiques, is there was no flavor or kinds of like a color or like a rhythm, something that makes up that team that makes sense. And I just didn't see it in Boston. I don't think anyone really saw what it was that was happening behind the scenes with that team. But a lot of times that's just what a good coach does, like Krusty. So I would say a lot of the same about Washington. I think you can compare those. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm a bit concerned about the language barrier, particularly with this roster. And that was a concern I did have as well. Oh my God.
You're dying.
I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think for me, when I first saw the Boston roster, I said, why do we have players like Gamsu and Kalios paired off with players like Kellex? These don't seem like pieces that should be connected. I was slightly able to draw a few threads together that could maybe make sense, much like I'm able to right now with Washington, with players like Jonas and Fuzix, or Corey and Stratus, who are both American players from American contenders teams that were middle of the pack. More than anything, I can draw comparisons between the roster and their coachability, their attitude towards the game, and how that might speak to the management personnel on Washington, who I've conversed with and kind of picked their brains on and understand what they were looking for and how these players could mirror what they were looking for. That said, I don't know if Boston was a team that was able to overcome their disparity through sheer mechanical ability and then eventual coaching. I think as a whole, these players, with a couple exceptions like Otto, are mechanically inferior to most of Boston's players, and therefore will need a little more love from the coaching department to turn them into the cohesive squad they need to be.
Definitely.
I'm hoping their offseason has been very, very, very busy. So busy. They need to be putting in the time. And I think they know that. From what I've heard from people like Kate and MKL, they have been on the grind. They know nobody thinks they're going to do well. They know where they are ranked. They read your power rankings and they say, okay, all we can do is try and prove them wrong. Which
Sometimes
I think
that's the
most
best
of these
motivation,
teams.
though.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I know they are a team that is motivated by the underdog power. Kate has thrived on underdog juice
that's her thing.
for the past 3 seasons, and she is channeling that ability into the rest of her analytical staff and her coaching staff and everything like that. Avala being the first female coach in contenders, I think, and then into Overwatch League as well. You know she's riding on that underdog juice because everybody's going to poke at her for being a girl, and all she's going to be able to do is put her nose down and show everybody why she's worth it. Right? Which I think is going to be a great storyline to follow.
Yeah.
Massive respect to her because she kicks ass on her own and she's joined a great staff. So that staff is really going to have to prove that they can thrive on that underdog juice and not drown in it, because that's a terrible way to go.
Yeah, I think if we get to, stage 1, stage 2, and Washington's not in the win now mentality, we may not see a lot of roster moves, but I think if they are like doing okay, they're semi-competing, I can see this team filling up their roster with a lot of these LFT players that are really good, because there are a lot of good LFT players out there right now. LFT, for viewers out there looking for a team, free agent players, whatever you want to call them. There are so many out there that are so good and could fit like the Western half of the roster or the Korean half. I mean, XL2, you could just pick up 3 of those players and make this team so much better. If finances are okay with this team, and if they're competing a little bit this year, I could really see them making some moves. Now, if they just are absolutely shut down in stage 1 or 2, there's no chance. I don't see why they would build mid-season. I think they would just wait till the end of the season to start rebuilding and kind of figure it out from there. But I would say of all the teams, keep an eye on free agency for Washington. I could see them patching up some holes pretty quickly, especially with their scout.
My way too early theory crafting, with such a huge roster in San Francisco and no clear identity yet whether they want to go straight Korean or straight Western or keep that split. They've got 2 great tanks in San Francisco in Super and Smurf. I mean, potentially they could be a team selling players to get that refined roster that London now has. And maybe Washington will be buyers. Maybe at that point is when they'll be able to flash their money out there and be like, hey, you know what? We can't trade you something for Super, but we want to get an American main tank over here. And, or like we want to get any of those DPS that they have. They have plenty of DPS over there. But, obviously I have no reason to think that would happen apart from the fact that I expect San Fran to be making some moves as well. So this could be a team that could be looking to change things up going into stage 2 or going into stage 3 to make a final push or to get ready for next year. So
I wonder too if, say we follow this hypothetical and Washington starts shopping for Super a little bit. There's potentially some past experience between him and Fozix, who was on NRG, which is the academy team for San Francisco. Some
totally
experience, some communication experience there. That's actually a pretty interesting theory.
Yeah,
I would like to think that they don't need to shop. I want to hope that they won't have to shop, of course. That's way better than like, oh crap, the roster sucks. Buy new, liquidate. But I think if we start approaching that would definitely be an interesting storyline to follow.
And
that season's going to be crazy in general.
Yeah, and like kind of like the same idea with Paris's identity. I feel like Washington's a team that can get an identity of some kind, being the team that's representing the United States. We'll get those USA chants, I'm sure, come out, just like Paris is going to get all the anthem singing and all the claps and all that. But I'd love to see this team be able to turn it into something, even if it's just down the line. Give them hope at the end of the season if things don't go the way that I'm sure every team wants.
Yeah, I agree. I think and just I think we've talked a good bit about Washington. I think in general, as we close, I think it'll be interesting to trades we're going to see in season 2.
Oh.
I don't know when the trade deadline will be. I think it's usually after stage 2 sometime.
Yeah, it'll be between stages 2 and 3.
Right before the All-Star break or during the All-Star break.
Yeah, and so I think we'll see a lot more buying and selling this year, maybe less trades, because I feel like teams are so picky with trading. But I think we will see a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers, especially with San Francisco and New York maybe selling, and teams like Washington, maybe Paris, maybe Florida buying. Florida should buy, but we'll see if they do. But it'll be interesting to see.
Many things. Will they?
Probably not.
Probably not.
But yeah.
In any case,
yeah,
I think that's it, right?
I think we did.
It's getting around to that time of the night. But before we head out, though, Dave, wow, you have convinced so many of our viewers here tonight that Toronto is not only a team to follow, but a team to love. And you were absolutely a brilliant guest, and we could not have given that team as much love, as much knowledge as you did. So thank you so much.
Well, I'd love to be on again, so I really appreciate it.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
We'll get that figured out. Don't worry. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, for sure. Connor, what are our next, or sorry, Katrina, go ahead. My bad.
Oh, go ahead. No, you're good. I was going to do something stupid.
Oh, of course you will. Don't you always? I was going to ask what our next 5 teams were that we'll be going over next week. I believe we're starting the Pacific Division now.
We will. We'll be starting alphabetically at the top half of the Pacific Division, and pending player.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
pending. Can I talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have anything confirmed yet, but I'm working on one of our first Overwatch League player appearances for 2019. An Overwatch League player appearance, maybe even 2. If I can make it happen next week, awesome. Maybe it has to wait another week, maybe. But I'm working on it. And if I can get that confirmed, you guys are going to freak out.
It's going to be wild.
It's going to be big. It's going to be big. This player or players, I'll throw out right now, will be from one of the teams or 2 of the teams that we will be reviewing in the next 2 weeks. We might shuffle the order of the teams around to make sure both of their teams are represented. So for now, we have a list of teams that we'll be going over next week. But that
can we talk about the teams
change
on like the week after or the week before, or so we don't have to be mean?
We'll post more information on our Twitter at WatchHaus _ as soon as we get some news. I'm actually going to bug those people tonight. One of them I'll probably wait till tomorrow. It's kind of a special day for him right now. Let's see if you guys could figure that one out. So I'll see what I can get figured out, and if I can get things confirmed, as soon as they're confirmed, you guys will know. If it has to wait another week, you guys will also know. We'll see. I'm working on it, and if it works, big pog.
Yeah, but for now, the 5 teams we'll be going over, unless these players change that, will be the Chengdu Hunters, the Dallas Fuel, the Guangzhou Charge, the Hangzhou Spark, and the LA Gladiators. Those will be the 5 teams for next week. We get 3 expansion teams, all of the Chinese teams besides Shanghai. And yeah, it's going to be a great show if those are the 5 teams we cover. If not, that's cool too. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. It's going to be great. Spicy leaks coming your way soon on who the guest is, maybe.
Keep an eye
out. Yeah, keep an eye out. All that.
Yeah, and shameless plug, go follow, first off, all the Twitters you see here on the overlay for all of us. Those are our personal Twitters where we meme and post articles and all the stuff you're supposed to do. And also follow us on the official WatchHaus Twitter at WatchHaus _ and the Game Haus Esports Twitter at TGH Esports.
I can't paste them that fast, but I can copy paste.
All right, before we head out, here comes my stupid thing. Since Dave is here, I kind of want to do something fun. Okay. What is one goal you have for the team that you are rooting for, other than, of course, winning? Like, what's something you want to see Toronto be able to do this season?
Well, I'd like for them to win Canada and beat Vancouver. I think that would be a really great feat.
That's a rivalry I didn't think of.
That's so good, yeah.
Let me take a look here. They play them in stage 2. The second to last week of stage 2. Okay. So that's one I'm really looking forward to. If they can beat Runaway, who's an established team, I'll be very happy.
All right, and Thibble, choose your favorite team or one of them.
Can
And
Dallas just re-sign Siegel, please?
Oh,
Bring him back.
As a streamer, if anything, come on.
Bring him back, right?
Yeah,
at
why is that not happening?
At least give me that little taste
Yeah.
of Siegel being back. Give me an excuse for Siegelman to exist, because at this point he's dying. I don't know what I'm gonna do with him. But without Siegel, there can't be a Siegelman. And that's kind of my shtick. He's right there. He's right here. Over here. Pointing is hard, yeah.
Here.
That would be great. That would be great. I would love Dallas to come to their senses and for Siegel to realize that he could still make a little money on the side just streaming for Dallas Fuel. Like, obviously, him coming back would be inadvisable given his current ability to make money off of stream. But man, I miss him so much. I also want Dallas to beat the Valiant again the next time they face off, because they upset them in stage 4, and that was awesome. And I also want them to beat NYXL because they lost to them in the stage playoffs, and that was not awesome. So that's my goal. Also, Open Division update. It is currently 3-2 Mirage Esports versus Path to Poverty, although they just tied up Busan 1-1. So we're going to the last stage there. That should be interesting.
Cool.
all
Please bring
right.
back Siegel.
My fingers are crossed for a certain team. But Goopy.
Yeah.
What's your goal for, I'm assuming, Houston?
Yeah, I got to go with Houston. They're still the faves. My goal for Houston's a pretty simple one. Do exactly what you did last year. I think if Houston does the exact same thing they did last year, go 6-4,
They will finish 10th again.
Exactly.
Oh.
6-4, 5-5, 4-6, each stage, whatever. Just be a balanced, average team. Get into the playoffs, turn it on. Put Spree in and just dominate. That's my only hope, is really just for them to get to the playoffs.
So fly under the radar and then activate the laser beams at the last second. I can respect that.
Exactly.
I
Not
gotta
to
say,
say,
we're gonna say be as good as Dallas will be, but
Also would be great, but we'll see. I root for both those teams. Dallas is kind of like my underground second team because I live in Waco, Texas, which is right in between the two. So I'm rooting for both, but yeah, I would love both to be in the playoffs, honestly. But just for Houston to be in like the 7-12 spot, that's all Goopy wants for the Houston Outlaws.
Okay, so this is obviously not going to happen just because, but like Battle of Texas Grand Finals.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine the yeehaw that would be contained in a single series?
The yeet.
You'd have to host it in Texas, obviously.
Yes.
Give everyone cowboy hats that light up
Change the plans
and stuff. Like, that could be an event. An
Yeah.
event of the century.
That'd
be fun.
Yeah, I absolutely.
As long as I get
agree.
DJ
Won't
Khaled,
happen.
then I
It'd be
will.
fun. No.
So excited.
Bring in like George Strait or
Oh, the cringe.
get your line dance. Get Hannah Montana. I don't know. That's an
Oh,
equal level of meme with DJ.
Wait, what's the name of the guy who screams in that Big Enough song?
Oh no! Yeah, that would be awesome. Just like the
Lincoln.
intro, like in the background.
Lincoln.
It's like the Overwatch players, and then the guy in the back, just like. I'd be there for that. That would be awesome. That would be really fun.
All
Katrina,
right.
what do you want?
This
What do you
is
want
why
for Seoul,
we
Katrina?
shouldn't run the Overwatch League, but also why we should totally be running.
Absolutely why we should run it. Katrina, what do you want for Seoul? Tell us.
Soul is my favorite team, even though I'm not repping them tonight. So thank you, Dave.
Absolutely. It's like 100%.
Yeah, 100.
I didn't know. I thought, because I remember there was an episode where you were trying to decide between the Gladiators and the Valiant. I believe it was because you were out that way, right?
That was
Since
just
since I'm now anyways,
okay.
I'm a Californian now, so I had to kind of make a choice. But Seoul is my number one team, and I just want them to make a stage playoff.
I'm with you.
That's an upgrade over their last season.
That's a conservative estimate. Yeah, I like that.
I mean, I think that they will be in the finals this year. That is outlandish and ridiculous, and I can't defend it.
Love
It's that feeling, though. It's that feeling,
vibe.
though, you know.
But it's deep inside. But realistically, which I try to bring to you, I want them to make a stage playoffs. Come on, guys, you got it.
Definitely.
Okay.
And on that note, we've learned a lot tonight. We've had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it has been lovely having Dave here. Lovely having all of you at home joining us in the
good to have you
chat,
back.
especially. Thank you. Oh, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to bring you potentially some exciting interviews and, of course, some more information about the Pacific League coming up next Sunday. So
Gonna be
Guys
good.
better be
Thank you
here
so
next
much.
weekend. Same
we'll
time.
see you then.